There are many video games based on emergency services, whether you want to pull over somebody on the autobahn as a police officer or maybe build your own hospital. There are many different options for you. One emergency service that has always had games based off of it over the years is firefighting. Having not played many of these types of games myself, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at a range of titles from different generations to see if they're any good. Can they exhibit more than mindlessly pointing hoses at fires? Let's find out as I look at 5 firefighting games. Starting off with the earliest game in this collection, the Ignition Factor was developed and published by Jaleco and released in Japan in 1994 and North America in 1995. Each level is usually a burning building or structure that you have to save a certain amount of civilians from. You start each level with a briefing, giving you an idea of what to expect going forward, and this information can be helpful when deciding what equipment to take with you. There are a few different fire extinguishers used to tackle different types of fires, an axe to knock down doors, a rope to cross areas, amongst other various items. You have to be careful not to take too much equipment with you, otherwise your character will become slow and sluggish and will lose the ability to run and kick. In each level you'll have a time limit to save a certain amount of people. You can use the minimap to find civilians and fellow firefighters who will help you replenish and trade certain items with you. Holding down R lets you strafe while using the fire hose and allows you to see hidden fires through walls and floors. Strategy is key here. You're going to need a good plan of what you need to do in each level, as time is a key factor. You're going to need to play these levels a few times to learn where to go and what items to use. This can be a bit frustrating, as one wrong move can be an instant game over, like this moment near the end of the level where I got off a boat to save a lady and went back into the boat only to fall into the water, causing me to have to start all over again. You would think a dip in the water would be nice while in a burning building. While I like the strategic elements, there are too many elements of the game that are just strange, like this bit where you have to spray a mannequin for a woman to appear. Also, there's hardly any music during the levels. A bit of up-tempo dramatic music would have added some excitement and tension. It would have been nice if you could swap items on the fly, rather than having to pause and manually move items in the menu. The Ignition Factor is worth checking out, but beware its difficulty can be cheap sometimes. It's available to play on the Nintendo Switch Online SNES service. Sticking with the same era, the Firemen was developed and published by Human Entertainment and was released in Japan in 1994 and Europe in 1995. You play as Pete. When a fire breaks out at a Christmas party, you and your colleague Daniel are tasked to enter the company's building, put out fires, save staff and ultimately remove a dangerous explosive chemical. Luckily your partner Daniel is actually quite helpful. He'll open doors for you and regularly help you put out fires with his axe. Damn, that is quite a skill. Speaking of the fires, you'll have to tackle them in different ways. Your main hose attack will take down bigger fires, while your wide spray attack will be effective against smaller fires. You can also pick up fire extinguishing bombs throughout the levels. Different fires can be dangerous in different ways. Some spread in different patterns, some come straight at you. Fire isn't your only concern, as you'll have to tackle crazy robots as well as crumbling floors. You'll sometimes have to crawl under pipes and flames, and there's a boss battle at the end of each stage. Thankfully, finding civilians gives you a well needed health boost. I really enjoyed playing through this game. It's a lot more linear and action packed than the Ignition Factor. The controls feel good and the game isn't too long, so it doesn't become too repetitive. There was a sequel released on the PlayStation 1 called The Firemen 2 Pete and Danny, but this was only released in Japan. It seems to be quite similar, but with the added bonus of having co-op play. Rosco McQueen Firefighter Extreme is a game that is as daft as its title. Released for the PS1 in 1997, you play as, you've guessed it, Rosco McQueen. You're tasked with putting out fires, destroying evil robots and saving civilians. Why these evil robots go round starting fires is beyond me, as the title sequence really doesn't explain anything. Rosco for some reason didn't bring his own water, so you'll have to collect bottled water to replenish your hose. There's other items to collect too, like throwing axes to use against enemies and stronger axes to knock down hardened doors. Throughout each level there are people to save, and God forbid if you miss anybody because they'll literally explode just to make you feel bad. Honestly, I was quite shocked when I first saw it. You pick up snacks to replenish your health, and if your temperature gets too hot, the game's over. There is some mild platforming here and there where you bounce onto different platforms and jump over gaps. The gameplay and platforming work quite well. I know third-person PlayStation 1 games can be a bit frustrating to control, but I didn't really have much of an issue here. The main issue I had was I got pretty bored quite quickly. Levels get repetitive in both layout and tasks, and once you've played a few stages, you've got the main experience of the game. It's fun for about half an hour, but no more than that.
My job is done.
Konami were a gaming juggernaut for the PlayStation 2 in the noughties. Specifically in 2004, they released Metal Gear Solid 3, Silent Hill 4, and this title, Firefighter F.D.18. You play as Dean McGregor, as you're tasked to rescue survivors and put out fires caused by an evil arsonist. It borrows elements from the 1991 film Backdraft. Each level is quite short, so it's good to play in short bursts. You'll do the usual fireman tasks like using 2 different nozzles on your fire hose, you can use a fire extinguisher, and you have an axe you can use to break down obstacles, weak walls, and annoying robots that try and electrocute you. Sometimes you'll have to find key cards for doors and crawl through vents like John McClane.
I know what a TV dinner feels like.
There are numerous hazards along the way, like these annoying oil spills that I just can't seem to avoid slipping on, or electrical items like computers you can get zapped from. Luckily you can find drinks and first aid items to replenish your health. At the end of each level is a boss in the form of a fire. These bosses have their own characteristics, such as this one, where it's a cyclone that sucks you in. I remember playing this game on a demo disc back in the day, and I remember being very impressed with the physics of the water hose. Yeah, I was very easily impressed back then. Overall, I enjoyed playing FD18. It's quite linear, but it's fun and has that old school Konami quality. Finally, I'm taking a look at Real Heroes Firefighter. The game was originally released on the Wii in 2010 in Europe, which then received a remaster in 2017 on the PC. The version I'm playing is a port to the PlayStation 4, which was released in 2020. Played in a first person perspective, you play as a new recruit to the fire department. You complete a short training mission to get to know your equipment, and then before you know it, you're off to your first call out. You'd think they'd start you easy on something simple like a cat getting stuck in a tree, but no, you're sent into a burning factory that's exploding left, right and centre. You have a few pieces of equipment to help you along the way. To put out fires, you can grab fire extinguishers and fire hoses from walls in the environment. You have an axe to chop down fallen beams and wooden doors, and a halogen bar to pry open metal doors. When using the water hose, you'll only have a limited range from where you first picked it up, so it has some realism. The hose has an option for a focus stream or a spray, and I feel like these two options work well for different situations. You also have a saw to open up holes in walls, and some hydraulic spreaders to get trapped people out of car wrecks. The game is a little short, but there's some nice variety to the missions. There's a fire in a neighbourhood which spreads to different people's gardens, and there's a mission within a mall where you're tackling fires within shops and a cinema. Speaking of which, this guy asks you to save some of the film reels from being burned. Yeah, I'm gonna risk my life and yours to save some crappy films.
Awesome!
Some of the design choices are pretty weird, and I think this is probably an issue turning a Wii game into a current game. The graphics are pretty bad. I understand they were going for a cel-shaded look, which may have worked on an older Wii system, but this HD remake really showcases the ugliness of it.
What's wrong with your face?
Something else that didn't translate well are these rotary saw segments. These are a real pain, and you can tell they would have worked much better with a Wii remote. Another thing is the user interface and loading screens. They're super small. The text is so tiny you'd be screwed if you had a smaller TV. There are some silly bits of humour splashed within the game, like some of the dialogue choices. Is it me, or does this child have a really deep voice?
Am I in trouble? Mommy!
Overall, I'm kind of confused why this title deserved so many versions across different consoles. The Wii elements from the original did not translate well to modern consoles, so I'd maybe give the Wii original a try. Now, I'm sure I'll get loads of comments saying you missed this game, you missed that game, so I'm briefly going to cover 4 notable games I didn't talk about. Quite possibly the first firefighting game, Firefighter, was released on the Atari 2600. I remember playing this on my TV Boy back in the day, which was essentially an unlicensed clone of the Atari 2600. You run along the bottom of a building putting out fires through windows, and you save a trapped person by hopping onto your truck's ladder. The controls are kind of awkward, it's a game best left in the past. One of the many strange FMV games to be released on the Sega CD and 32X CD, Fahrenheit lets you choose your path through burning buildings in glorious full motion video. The scenes are quite impressive sometimes, but it's not the sort of game I'd choose to play. Finally, coming this winter, Fire Girl Hack and Splash Rescue is a 2.5D platformer game where you put out fires, save and recruit people, and it has a really nice art style. I like how your fire hose can be used to break your fall as well as put out fires. Definitely a game to keep your eye on. Thank you for watching this video on 5 firefighting games. I hope you found it interesting, and I'd love some suggestions on what sorts of games to cover in the future.